This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about being disappointed by mail-order sea monkeys, why the return button on your keyboard is called the return button, and a certain stuffed sheep's new Instagram account. All that and more as we watch Season 3, Episode 6 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Sophia. I am one of your hosts, and joining me as always is my brother and co-host. What's up, Imran?
Hi, Sophia. Hello, listener. Listen, you guys, I'm a little bit in the doghouse with the wife here.
Uh-oh, what happened?
Well, last night, late at night, she caught me on the telephone.
Uh-oh.
Well, I was talking to Jake from State Farm. I was trying to save us some money on insurance and surprise her, and she ruined it. Boo.
Oh, that's sweet, though, and very appropriate for what we're about to talk about, which is today's episode, Season 3, Episode 6 of Perfect Strangers, which is called Your Cheatin' Heart.
Yes, a fantastic Hank Williams country song from 1952. Listen, Sophia, I love all types of music, and actually there is a lot of country music that's really amazing. This is kind of the era that I love. I used to be in a Western swing band many moons ago.
I remember.
We used to play a bunch of Hank Williams songs. What's funny about Hank Williams is he's great. Hank Williams Jr., horrible. But Hank Williams III, amazing.
So what you're saying is Chet Hanks' kid will be amazing.
Yes. No, there is a Hank Williams III. There's 3 of them already.
No. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I meant Chet Hanks, the rapper son of Tom Hanks.
Oh, Chet Hanks.
Of White Boy Summer fame.
Chet Hank Williams.
Cool. Yeah, and country music is all about heartbreak, and that's what we're going to talk about sort of today.
And Hank Williams made a career out of literal pain and heartbreak, like all of his songs. He was going through stuff with his wife. He was on like pain medication for his back.
Good for him.
But because of his pain, we have incredible country music. Now, if you check the TV guide that week, the episode description would have said Jennifer's frequent visits to the office to see Balky make Larry think he's being stabbed in the back by his best friend. What? This would never happen. Larry Appleton. We'll see.
We'll find out. This episode, as always, is starring Bronson Pinchot and Marklyn Baker. We also have Jennifer and Mary Ann, played by Rebecca Arthur, and Melanie Wilson, and a very brief appearance by everyone's favorite Jo Marie Payton France, playing Harriet Winslow.
This episode aired October 28th, 1987.
Act 1, let's get into it. We start in the basement of the Chicago Chronicle. The boys are hard at work. Larry's typing away at his desk. Balky is sorting mail. Balky is in a very colorful shirt, which we will hear about later from our friend Balky Duds. Larry is at his desk, like I said, typing away, but he's frustrated. And the opening dialogue, we find out that the typewriter he's working on is missing the J, the K, and the period. Sorry, they're there. They don't work.
You can't type a lot of things without those 3.
You can, but you have to be very creative.
3 very important letters on the keyboard. And then there's a hilarious bit where Balky walks over with his mail basket, and he's standing next to Larry at the typewriter, and Larry does the return on the carriage.
Okay, do we have to explain what
typewriters
this is?
And carriages and what this device even is?
Hitting return meant.
Yes.
Okay, so for our younger listeners,
back in the day,
return on the keyboard is called return because you would push the ink carriage paper scroll part.
Right?
You would return it to its original position.
The whole thing shifts left to right, so it goes back to the beginning of.
Okay, you know what? Just Google.
Justify. Yeah. Anyways, in this great bit, he hits return. The carriage flies off the typewriter into Balky's basket.
It's not supposed to come off the whole machine.
This is not a functioning typewriter.
And so Larry just mutters, and he's annoyed about how this major Chicago newspaper can't even give their reporters typewriters that work.
Why are they so cheap? Where's the
Fair
budget?
point. Fair
There's
point.
a budget on typewriters. Who's running
And
the
this
budget?
was like in the 80s before like when newspapers were like big deals and had budgets. Anyway, he's like, I got to finish the story. He runs up the stairs to use a different typewriter upstairs.
The
and
nice
when
typewriter.
when he's out of the scene, out of the basement, Balky goes over to the elevator and he presses the buzzer. And we've seen him do this before when he first joined the Chronicle, and it makes this like terrible buzzing sound. He presses it again, and eventually he starts doing the tune of Barbara Ann by the Beach Boys, ba 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 ba, and then he starts dancing around with his, like hips as he does, and continues to push it. And suddenly the elevator opens. Harriet comes out, and I knew exactly what she was going to say. I said it along with her.
Catchphrase time.
Catchphrase time. She goes, "Don't do that, baby.
Don't do that, baby." Catchphrase
I
time.
swear, I
Absolutely.
said it along with her because I was like, "Oh, I know what's coming."
It's a great catchphrase, though. But the elevator opens, and Jennifer is there also, surprising Balky. Balky goes, "What are you doing here? If Cousin Larry sees you again, he's going to start to put 2 and 4 together."
Which, of course, he means put 2 and 2 together, but I guess 2 and 4 would work also.
Yeah, you get 4, you get 6. What's the difference? And then Harriet's like, "What's all this going on here? I don't mean to pry. I need to know what's happening." And they tell her that they've been sneaking around the past few days because they're trying to surprise Cousin Larry with a new typewriter. A very thoughtful gift.
And not just any typewriter.
No, it's
Balky
not.
pulls out a flyer from his pocket and he reads it and he goes, "A Wellington 4000. And then he does this like dramatic, breathy voice with feather touch control.
It's just like what was the thing when he changed his voice for that other slogan? I can't remember. I love when he changes his voice for the slogans.
He does it often.
This typewriter, though, is rare. It's like the PlayStation 5 right now.
It's hard to find. The hottest typewriter of late 1987.
Very expensive. And Jennifer says she can't find this typewriter anywhere. It's pricey. And then Balky goes, "Oh, bummer."
Which is like a strange line.
He just gives up right there.
It just
But
sounds
then
weird.
Harriet's got the scoop. She's like, "Have you checked out Anderson's office supply?" And she gives him the directions to go to the end in an alley, knock twice, and ask for Malcolm. And then she goes, "Whatever you do, don't stare at his tattoo," which is pretty funny.
Jennifer's like, "All right, that sounds safe."
You know what that made me think of, though? The amount of people who are professionals that you meet in everyday life that have tons of tattoos now. And it's just normal,
now.
right? They got sleeves.
Back in
and you're
'87, it was like one tattoo, and you were like some dangerous.
You're like,
person.
"Who's that dude all tatted up?" "Oh, he's my cardiac surgeon."
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fine. It's good.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, suddenly Larry turns up. He's back. He comes back before Jennifer has a chance to leave, and he sees her, and he's like, "What, Jennifer? You're here?" And he makes this remark. He's like, "That's 3 days in a row you've come to visit us." And he's like, "Are you here to put another ad in the classified?" So we find out this is the excuse she's been giving him for the past 3 days. And he says, and he asks her, "What are you selling this time?" And Jennifer and Balky like nervously try to both answer at the same time with different answers, right? So Jennifer's like, "My toaster." Balky says her oven. They say it at the same time. Then Balky quickly follows with her toaster oven.
Yeah, toaster oven.
And so Larry's like, "That's weird." And he doesn't say anything. And then he asks Jennifer if they're still on for their dinner date that very night. And Jennifer then remembers that they have a dinner date that very night and says, "Oh, sure." And then she rushes out, but she exits the basement through the storage area
Where is she going?
/ archives.
Is that where you
in
place
the
the
back
classified
of the
ads?
room.
Maybe that's where you place the classified
Maybe.
ads.
But that's
I've never
like
seen anyone. Yeah, usually
we
people
don't
exit
really
out the
see
garage
people go
or
out that way.
the
but
elevator or
who knows?
upstairs.
Yeah, maybe she needed something from the archive.
This part is great because, as we know, Larry is now a crack investigative journalist, right?
Ugh.
He can tell
full of himself.
And full of himself. He can tell when something's up. His sniffing. This doesn't smell right. So he goes to Balky and goes, "Balky, I can see right through her." And then Balky hilariously goes, "Did you send away for those special glasses?" Which I love this reference.
Again, some of our younger
Did you get this
listeners might not
reference?
get it. Of course I did, yeah. I read
my
those
God.
comic books. And
This is a reference to anyone who read comic books back in the days from the 60s through the 80s. Maybe you read Archie comics or maybe you read Marvel comics, but there was always that page in the back that had all these crazy novelty items. And one of them were these special X-ray glasses that promised you could see through people's clothes. It's kind of creepy, I guess.
And it was funny because it was always these sort of these like round lenses that were white.
Yeah, with
these
concentric
like
circles.
Swirly black lines, like
but
a black swirl.
It was blacked out lenses with a dot in the middle is all it was, with a cutout, I think.
Yeah.
They didn't really do nothing. Apparently it created a double optical illusion. But then remember sea monkeys? Did we ever buy sea monkeys? I thought I did once.
I'm sure we did, yeah.
And I don't know what those things were. It was like little white flecks floating in water, and you were like, oh, look, I'm taking care of something.
I think they were like something called brine shrimp.
They were brine shrimp, but they were very small, and I don't know if they were alive.
That was such a strange time.
Right?
Why did they sell children sea monkeys?
It was the most.
What's a sea monkey anyway?
I remember the cartoon, the drawing on the ad, the colors, the copy. It was the most exciting ad, and you're like, I want this little.
It was the kind of ad you would copy with silly putty.
Yeah, and you're like, I want this this underwater kingdom that I can call my own. And it didn't look anything like that. Of course,
no. Okay.
Anyways,
back to the story.
Enough reminiscing.
So Larry is feeling all Larry smug and confident, and he's Larry splaining to Balky that he doesn't believe Jennifer's nonsense about these classify ads. And he's like, he goes through all of them. And he's like, I don't think. And then he huffs so loudly that Balky flinches.
This is great. Yes, because Balky is very nervous at this point.
While he's sorting the mail, he's jumps.
It's so good. He's trying to keep the secret.
And Larry knows. Larry is so confident he knows what's going on. He says, obviously, Jennifer's got a bad case of the Larrys.
I love this, the Larrys. She's got a bad case of the Larrys.
And Balky says, well, of course she does. Don't be ridiculous. And then he says, are the Larrys anything like the Willies? And Larry's like, no. And he says, Balky, I think she's falling for me. And Balky just looks at him and goes, interesting.
And this is great. Larry's like, look, I'm going to take her out to dinner. I'm going to pull out all the stops. Balky goes, oh, cousin, does that mean you're going to let her order the double Whopper? So they've been going to Burger King this whole time. And Larry's like, listen, just order from the left side of the menu. You get the meals 1 through 6, and we're going to have to cut it off there. Larry goes, no, better than that. Tonight I'm taking her to a restaurant with waiters, with actual waiters. And Balky goes, oh, you taking waiters or you're not taking me?
Yeah, Balky's upset by this.
And Larry goes, I'll take you next time. And Balky's like, oh, stop, thank you. Oh, you go. It's too nice.
And that's our end of Act 1. A super short end of Act 1, but a very quick and concise way to set up
the conflict.
Half the conflict.
Yeah,
we haven't gotten to the second half of the conflict, so it's a half setup.
But there's a secret. There's a plan. There's already characters coming up with things
around. Yeah.
Off the top of their head. Listener, you want to get involved with our replays, our recaps, our discussions? Join our Facebook group. Search for Dance of Joy podcast group, where I post a thread every week of the show we're recording that week, since we do record like 3 weeks ahead. So if you have any observations and quick comments, drop a comment in the thread. We will share it on the episode on the show. And boom, just like that, you're part of the show. See, isn't this fun?
Yes, we're all a family watching Perfect Strangers together.
We're all cousins, really. Come on.
We're all cousins. Everyone's a cousin. Act 2. We are now in the apartment, Balky and Larry's apartment. And Larry we don't see him. He's in his bedroom getting ready for his big date. And there's a knock at the front door. And this is really weird. So Balky is wearing an apron around, that's full, like around his waist.
Right.
Not the top part, but just the bottom part.
Yeah.
And when he goes to open the door, did you notice this? He turns the doorknob like with the green apron, like it's COVID time. Like he didn't touch the doorknob. He opens the door using the apron.
Simple explanation. That he was just cooking. He may have had some spicy food and meat on his hands, and that's what you use apron for.
So he uses the apron to
But
open
there's
the
a lot
door.
of like very interesting COVID thing. Even like remember last episode, she's spraying down the thing, and we're like, why?
It's
What?
like weird COVID
So
stuff.
at some point, we were aware of these germs. Anyways, back to the episode.
So anyway, he opens the door with the apron, and it's Jennifer. And Larry's in the bedroom getting ready for his date. Balky like whispers to Jennifer, "Did you get the Wellington 4000 with feather touch control?"
Feather touch control.
Which he says the same way he did before. And Jennifer's like, "No, it was still too expensive at Anderson's, but they told me that the supplier is having a clearance sale and maybe I can bargain with him." And Balky gets excited. He goes, "I love bargaining." And he points to his vest that he's wearing and he says, "I got this vest by bargaining." And Jennifer goes, "I hate it." And Balky says, "Well, let's not mince words." And Jennifer's like, "No, not the vest. I hate bargaining." That was a very funny little exchange with Jennifer and Balky.
Like it makes you're implicitly notice this vest, which if you hadn't, and it's a crazy looking black and white vest. I can't wait to hear about it.
So Jennifer says she hates bargaining and she begs Balky to go with her, but it has to be that night because it's the last night of the sale.
Oh boy.
Which also means that she's going to have to make up some excuse to bail on her date with Larry, for which the date that Larry's very excited about. And she tells Balky that to meet her downstairs in 5 minutes. But before she can scuttle out, Larry turns up from out of the bedroom.
Holding up a mint green and a pink shirt, asking Balky which one looks better.
And he's wearing like
a white tee.
A tight white t-shirt, undershirt that's pretty fitted. And it's something like we rarely see him in, not a collared shirt.
I just thought it was funny the moment where he sees Jennifer. He's like, "Jennifer, oh," and he covers up.
Covers himself up, even though he's like pretty covered.
He's wearing clothes.
Funny. So he comes out and he sees Jennifer and he's shocked. He's a little surprised because it's early. And he's like, "Oh, hey." And Jennifer tells him that she's can't go to dinner with him because something came up.
Making things up on the fly, yes.
He's so disappointed. He's like, oh. And then he goes, "What?" And she goes, What? He goes, what came up?
She goes,
and then she's like, "Oh." And then she has to think on the fly, and she tells him that she has a chance to work the Concorde flight to Paris, because remember, Jennifer and Marianne are flight attendants. The Concorde flight to Paris, she has a chance to work it, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And then Balky chimes in. Sweet, innocent Balky says, "Oh, I didn't know the Concorde flew out of Chicago." And Jennifer, gives him these, dead-on eyes, and she goes, "That's why it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity."
They just made up this plan, and he forgot.
And Balky finally gets it, and he goes, "Oh."
Do we need to explain the Concorde? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. What is it?
Concorde used to be supersonic passenger travel where you would fly from New York to Paris in a matter of hours.
Oh, wow.
And it ran for many years, and then I think it was the late 80s.
Wait, but how many hours? Because New York to Paris is only like
3 hours. Three hours. Yeah. I'm talking.
Oh, wow. Super flight.
Yeah, super fast. Way less than half the time. But there were a few accidents where the plane may have exploded.
Ooh.
And they had issues, and they stopped this Concorde flight, and they haven't done it for years. I just saw on the news, though, they are bringing back a supersonic Concorde flight. It goes from New York to London in 3 hours or something.
Would you do that? I would totally do that.
That's kind of cool. I would. I think it has to fly out really high in the atmosphere and then go fast. I don't know how.
So as to not explode?
No, just to go fast.
To go
I don't know. But they're bringing back these crazy supersonic flights, which I don't know. We'll see how. I would watch the first couple of them, see how it goes.
What if there was a big promotion to be
win
in
a trip on the new? I forget what it's called.
It's not the new
couple
flights.
It's not Concorde. It's called something else.
All right. So, okay, thanks for that. I didn't know that. That's
it was a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a very fast plane, basically. So Jennifer leaves to wait for Balky downstairs so they can go bargain. Balky turns to Larry and goes, "Pretty lucky break for Jennifer." Oh. And Larry's not having it. He's like, "I deserve better lies than the Concorde And Balky goes, what make her think she's lying to you? She's your friends. Friends don't lie to friends. And then he makes like a face where he kind of throws up in his mouth because he's lying to his
Yeah,
friend.
because of course he's lying to his friend.
And it's almost like a physical reaction of emotional guilt that was like uncontrollable. And so Larry thinks Balky trying to cheer him up. And Larry goes, at times like these, it's really important to have a friend like you to talk to. Balky goes, I'm glad I could be here for you. And before he does this, he grabs Larry's arm.
He's holding his hand.
He checks his watch and he's holding his hand. And then he goes, I'm so glad I could be here for you. And then he looks at the watch and he goes, well, I got to go. And drops his hand and turns around.
And then the next bit is just really, really funny. This very funny exchange, psychological exchange a little bit. So Balky says he has to go. And Larry's like kind of confused about what's going on. And he asks Balky where he's going. And Balky says, well, at times like these, it's also very important that you spend time by yourself. So I think I'm just going to go to a movie. And Larry, like, without missing a beat, he's like, oh, I'll go with you.
No.
It might cheer him up,
Yeah.
So he goes to get his jacket. And then Balky, like, closes the door to the apartment, comes back in. He's like, on second thought, I really don't feel like a movie. But why don't you just go ahead? Because he's trying to get rid of Larry so he can go meet Jennifer, right?
I love this.
He goes, why don't you just go ahead? And then Larry's like super confused. And there's like a beat of silence and he looks very confused. And then he's like, well, who am I kidding? A movie's not going to help. I'd rather stay here with you and talk it out. Aw. He said, that always makes me feel better. And then Balky is like, how am I going to get out of this? I have to get out of the apartment.
Something else.
This is like brilliant. He puts on this whole performance. He just leans way into it, like with confidence. You know how they say, he goes, okay, fine. And he starts yelling at Larry.
Yeah, he gets mad at him.
I spend all evening trying to cheer you up. I give you one pep talk after another. I invite you to go to a movie, but you insist I go with you, which I thought was so funny, like mind tricks. I invite you to go to a movie, but you insist I go with you. I give until I'm blue in the head, which means blue in the face, but you want more. Well, let me tell you something, Buster. I have no more to give. And he opens like this motion, like opening from his chest. And he says, the cupboard is bare. And Larry is just like surprised and confused. And he's trying to interrupt him. But Balky leans in and he cuts him off. So if you want to sit by yourself and feel sorry, go ahead. But don't make me look at it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need some fresh air. And he exits the apartment and Larry's just like, what?
I think he should have got an Emmy for that. That's a great performance.
So good.
Just
very funny mind tricks.
The cupboard is bare. I have no more. Okay, so they exit and we cut to the next scene later, late in the night. Balky and Jennifer are in the hallway outside the apartment.
Late in the night.
Sneaking back in after returning from this bargain.
And we see the hallway. And by the way, this is a different hallway than we've seen in season 1 and 2.
Green. There's green.
Yeah.
This hallway is
it's a different
brown.
angle. It's a different color.
It's a different
There's no
looking
opposite
hallway.
apartment. Like
reality was altered somehow.
Yes.
Between season 2 and 3, and nobody wants to acknowledge it. Maybe they don't know. Anyways, they're talking about what a great deal they got. And how Balky did a great job of negotiating, because Balky comes from Meepos. They negotiate everything. You know he's good. And he even says, on Meepos, only a fool buys retail.
Yes.
And then it cuts to inside the apartment, and you see Larry come out of his bedroom in his pajamas, going to probably the bathroom, but he hears Balky and Jennifer talking in the hallway and goes over by the door. And just then, Jennifer's like, shh, Larry's going to hear us. And Balky goes, I just don't know how much longer I can fool Cousin Larry. And now Larry is listening to everything they're saying behind the door.
And Jennifer, he's still listening from behind the door. And Jennifer says, well, just remember, if Larry finds out, it will ruin everything.
Uh-oh.
And so this is what he hears from through the door. And just then Balky starts to open the door and Larry's like, oh no. And he runs to the kitchen and ducks to hide behind the counter. And Balky and Jennifer enter. Balky enters. Jennifer stands in the doorway and she says, I'm exhausted, Balky, you were you were great. And then she says, I learned a few things from you tonight.
This looks bad.
Like purposely she acted it in this like seductive kind of like sweet voice tone.
Larry's facial reactions to these lines are hilarious.
And then they're cutting to Larry's facial reactions behind the counter and he is in shock. And Balky's like, you know, it's like I always say, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So all of this innuendo, right?
Yeah, great. It's
and Jennifer says, well, you're the best. And Larry is just in shock at what he's hearing.
Betrayed and just horrified as Jennifer leaves and Bucky goes in his bedroom and Larry just get up and marches over by Bucky's door and grabs his hair. I'm surprised it hasn't all fallen out by now. He hasn't pulled it out yet.
Yeah, and then we cut to black, and that's the end of Act 2. So now we have the second part of our conflict, which is that Larry thinks that Balky and Jennifer are having an affair and sneaking around behind his back.
Oh, boy.
Well, they are sneaking around behind his back.
They're sneaking around doing something.
For a reason.
We will find out if the plan happens. Listener, I'm thirsty. I need some coffee.
So thirsty.
There's a way you can help out. You can buy us a virtual coffee and support the show and show your love for our weekly podcast. Visit our website, danceofjoypod.com/support and click that buy me a coffee button. You can buy one coffee, multiple coffees. You can buy Rainy a coffee if you're enjoying Balky Duds. We appreciate all the support. Everything goes back into maintaining and keeping on creating the perfect strangers timeline and reality that we're
the multiverse.
In. The perfect strangers multiverse.
The Dance of Joy multiverse.
It is a multiverse. All right, Act 3 starts, Sophia, and did you notice the exterior zoom into the building shot zooms into a different part of the
pans
building?
Up the building.
Up to the third floor in the corner. Who lives here?
So then we go to the interior and we realize it is Jennifer and Marianne's apartment.
Wow.
And there's a knock at the door and it's frantic Larry. He's still in his pajamas, but he's thrown like a jacket over them. And he like barges in. Marianne opens the door. She's holding a little toy poodle, a real poodle. That's a toy poodle.
It's a real dog. And I believe it's her dog.
It's Rebecca Arthur's own poodle, Emmy. It has a little bow in her hair. It looks just like Marianne.
I was excited that we got to see another apartment in the building. And this is the first time we've seen the girl's apartment. This
is the first, but we'll see it every there's another like couple times, not a whole lot. Larry barges past Marianne. Marianne's like, oh, hi, Larry, come on in. And he comes in, he's frantic, he's upset, and he goes, is Balky here? And Marianne's like, Larry, Balky is your roommate. I live with Jennifer.
Killer. So good for a headline. Holy crap, it was so funny. And, oh my God, that was hilarious.
She's also in a robe, by the way, which we'll get to in a minute. And then Larry's like, is Jennifer here? And Marianne tells him that Jennifer left early that morning. And Larry's like, we got to sit down. I have some shocking news. And Marianne goes, have they discontinued this pattern?
Oh my God.
And then it like pans out and we see that her robe and the wallpaper and a bunch of the upholstery, the pillows and this chair in the back.
Lampshade.
And the lampshade. A lot of things in this apartment have the same. It's like a pastel striped pattern, but it's all the same.
I've never seen anybody do this
silly little
before.
Gag that they did that was
so good, but I've never even seen this gag on TV. Like the whole once you notice, you're like, wait a minute, she's wearing the same pattern.
It is so funny.
And
then they gave her this line to highlight it. Have they So Larry says, I have some shocking news.
I mean, if they discontinue the pattern, the whole decor, the whole thing is done. And then she's got, so it's like pink and this pattern is the decor of their apartment.
And the rest of this conversation is also hilarious.
This is amazing.
She doesn't get it for a long time. Larry goes, Marianne, listen very carefully. Jennifer and Balky are having an affair. And then there's a beat and Marianne just goes, what do you mean? And Larry says, an affair, a tryst, a liaison. And Marianne says, Yeah.
Keep going.
And then Larry says, Balky and Jennifer are having a cheap, sordid sex thing.
Oh, man. She gets that as she finally understands and can't believe it. She says Balky is the sweetest guy she ever met. And she and Jennifer have been friends since they were 8. She goes, how could they do this? Larry says, love hurts, doesn't it, Marianne? And Marianne goes, it sure does. And then she thinks for a minute and she goes, but Larry, why are you upset? Which is awesome.
And then
Burn.
we don't see his reaction. It just cuts back to
Like, what an
this was like
unintentional
a weird
burn.
cut. Did you notice this?
No.
This cut between the scenes, like every other time they do a scene change that's not an act change. It's like a little fade with some music or not. And this one was just like a straight silent cut. No fade.
A hard jump cut, huh?
Hard cut, yeah. Which just, I don't know, stood out for me. Anyway, we hard cut back downstairs to Balky and Larry's apartment. And so, yeah, it's still pretty early in the morning. Larry's still at Marianne's. Jennifer and Balky enter the typewriter. They think Larry's in his bedroom because his bedroom door is closed, like sleeping still. So they enter the apartment. They're carrying this typewriter in a large box, and Jennifer's carrying wrapping paper. And they tiptoe into Balky's room and shut the door behind them. And they think Larry's in his bedroom sleeping.
Just then, Larry does come back through the front door, heads right for the kitchen because he's stressed. Guess what he needs? His white bottle of antacid.
Yes.
At which point, Balky and Jennifer come out of the bedroom, and Balky sees Larry, and it's like, oh, and it spins Jennifer and pushes her into the closet.
Yeah, it's time for some physical comedy.
That's where the closet is.
Yes, we found the closet. We
got
found
it.
the closet. It's opposite Balky's new bedroom.
Door is still to the right of the fireplace. Got it.
I'll just make a brief mention here. We're going to talk about it later, but the shirt that Balky's wearing in this scene is super cool, very interesting, and it
looks very comfortable.
I'll give you some more thoughts after we hear from Balky Duds.
So Larry's over in the kitchen and he's got his antacid, and Balky goes over and was like, "Good morning, cousin." And
very
Larry,
cheerfully.
very cheerfully, but Larry just gives him the little side narrow eye and goes, "Well,
Larry's pissed.
You're just as smooth as you can be, aren't you?" And Balky goes, "Well, I do use moisturizer." Then like shows him his hands. Balky needs to get Larry out of the apartment, right? Because they're there with the president. He goes, "Hey, let's go out for breakfast, cousin." Larry goes, "I'm not hungry." And then Balky goes, "Man, let's take a walk. We'll just walk down State Street, that great street, and work up an appetite."
And State Street, that great street, of course, is a reference to a line in the famous song Chicago, that toddlin' town.
It's a great street. State Street is a great street.
Most famously sung by the one, the only, Frank Sinatra.
Yep. But Larry is not having any of this. He takes off his jacket. He turns around to go put it in the closet where Balky just hid Jennifer, right? Yes. And Balky blocks Larry's path. And he goes, I wouldn't put your coat in there, cousin. I saw a roach the other day. And just then, did you notice? You hear Jennifer scream from inside the closet.
I did not
he goes,
notice that.
Yeah, it's a big one.
The size of a Winnebago.
It was the size of a Winnebago. I had to rewind. I was like, wait a minute. Because the minute he goes, there's a roach in the closet, you hear her scream from inside the closet.
I did not catch that. That's funny.
So he does get Larry away from the closet, downstage towards the sofa, at which point Jennifer sneaks out of the closet and goes into Larry's bedroom.
And Balky sees this, so he now knows that Jennifer is now in Larry's bedroom. But Larry, meanwhile, is just getting more and more upset. And he says, "Okay, Balky, when you're ready to be honest with me, let me know." And he goes back to the closet and he puts his jacket away. And then he goes, "Until then, I'll be in my room."
Uh-oh. No.
And he heads for his room, but that's where Jennifer is hiding now. And Balky knows this too. So Balky blocks him again. Yeah. And he grabs Larry kind of like by the shoulders and like does this little like waltzy dance thing for a few steps back upstage.
Back
into the living room, away from the bedroom.
Quick dance move.
And he just says, "Don't go to your room." And then he, again, like before, he leans into everything. He
Yeah.
says, let's just be honest. Let's sit down and let's just be straightforward and honest and just let our hair down. And by now they're sitting on the couch. He's like brought him to the couch to sit down next to him. And then he goes, you go first. And he crosses his legs nonchalantly. And Balki says, you go first. And they're sitting on the couch. And while this whole thing was happening, Jennifer, we see in the background, and Balki sees it too, has come out of Larry's room and run into Balki's room to hide in there.
It's all timed very well, very efficiently.
Yeah.
But so they're sitting down, and Larry just looks at him and he goes, okay, I've had enough. He goes, I know what's going on. I know all about you and Jennifer. And so here we have the misunderstanding that we're all following, right? Balki responds not in the way Larry would think you would respond to accusation like this.
He responds in that, like, oh, man. Like
boy.
he really genuinely wanted to do a surprise and somebody gave it away. And he's like, oh, like in this endearing disappointment, right? He's like, you take my breath away. If only you knew how hard we tried to keep it from you.
And then we get a great Larry goes, aha! And points. So you admit it.
And Balki tells him that he's bummed that Larry had to find out. And Larry is at this point just like devastated because Balki is admitting it.
Yes.
And he says to Balki, just tell me how long it's been going on. And Balki, like nonchalantly, just goes, well, we've been kicking around the idea for a couple of months, but we really didn't do anything about it until last week.
Cut punch the Larry.
Yes.
And then Larry, painfully, he goes, how could you deceive me this whole time? And Balki goes, well, it wasn't easy, but it got fun when I pictured how surprised you would be when we sprung it on you. And Larry goes, you sprung it on me? What? How were you going to tell me? Because we were going to invite you over to dinner, and then right before the dessert come out, we were going to yell surprise.
And now Larry is like incredulous. He's mortified. He's devastated. He's like, what? And he says, that's how you were going to tell me? You and Jennifer are lovers?
Uh-oh.
And it cuts to Balki for a minute. Balki's face is just like, now Balki's in shock, right?
He's rocked. Like,
what?
Yeah.
He's just frozen, staring at him, like trying to understand. And Larry continues. He says, you steal my girl, you lie to me, and then you throw me a party to tell me about it?
Oh, my God.
And Balki's face is still like in shock, and he's maybe hurt. Maybe he's like confused. And Larry goes on. He says, have you no guilt, no shame, no remorse? And Balki just stares at him, and he's stunned. And he doesn't say anything. And Larry says, well, obviously not. And then he leaves to walk back toward his bedroom.
At which point, Jennifer pops out and goes, Larry Appleton. He goes, aha! and then
points at her.
But she is mad because she heard everything. And she says, how dare you talk to Balki that way? He's your best friend. And Larry's like, best friend? Oh, really? Really? And where did my best friend take you last night? Dinner? Dancing? And she goes, an office supply clearance sale. And Larry does a double take. And then this is so funny. He goes, kinky?
Kinky.
So what does he think they're doing?
So Jennifer's pissed. She tells Larry that actually they were buying a present for him.
Oh, boy.
And Larry's still not buying. He's like, is that why you were in Balki's bedroom? And he's emphasizing these B's with this we get this repeated alliteration. And it's very funny because Jennifer responds with, that's exactly why I was in Balki's bedroom. And she also emphasizes the B's. I don't know. It's just a silly, funny thing. And Larry's like, so what were you doing in there? Gift wrapping it?
What were you doing? Gift wrapping it? I love. He's
and
so
then
gone.
While he's like fuming, Jennifer goes into Balki's bedroom, brings out the large typewriter box, puts it on the coffee table, and slaps a bow on it. And Larry doesn't get it right away. He's still angry, and he looks at the box. He's like, "That's a Wellington 4000." And meanwhile, Balki like has had a moment to like process, and he like very solemnly and quietly just like gets up from the couch.
Still hasn't said a word.
Hasn't said anything. He walks toward the kitchen very slowly. Larry's still angry. That's a Wellington 4000. And then he looks around, and then he looks at it again. He goes, with feather touch control.
And then amazing, like the physical comedy in this episode was all in the facial expressions.
Yeah.
Amazing facial expression realization on Larry's face as he's putting everything together, and he goes, oh boy. Oh, and then Marianne storms in and she goes, aha! And this part is so funny. It's probably the funniest bit. She comes in and yells, aha! She goes, how dare you try to steal the man I like a lot away from me? She didn't even say love.
Man, I like a lot.
She's screaming this at Jennifer, and Jennifer goes, Marianne, remember we were shopping for a typewriter for Larry, and Marianne just goes, all right.
And then she turns to Larry and she says, Larry, they weren't having a cheap sorted sex thing. And Jennifer just gives Larry this look like, what?
She knew the whole time he was telling her, and she just forgot. That
but now
hilarious.
Jennifer's like, that's what you thought, and is looking at him like incredulously. And so, of course, Larry knows that now. The girls turn to leave. And as they're leaving, Marianne's like, what's going on? And Jennifer's like, Marianne, you never know what's going on.
She knew the whole time. It's so good.
So funny. So Marianne has some shining moments.
Oh, she's got some great lines. But now we are left with awkward a silence, kind of painful, as Balky still hasn't said a word. He's standing at the counter with his back to him. And now some more great physical comedy
from Larry.
Mark Lindbaker, as he slowly walks over to the typewriter box and he kind of brushes it with his fingers, and then he kind of like bobs the bow. And then he walks behind Larry, still not saying anything. And then he just like sticks behind Balky. And then he just like sticks his arms out, motioning at the thing like, ah.
So funny.
Balky doesn't turn around. And then Larry just starts nervously laughing and smiling. And he's like, the move I'm going to make is this. Wasn't this funny? And he goes, what crazy things people do when they misunderstand each other. And he's
trying to laugh it off.
He's like, ha, ha, oh my God. Because, when you think of the stupid things I did, when I thought you and Jennifer, well, it just makes you want to laugh out loud, doesn't it? And Balky is still hasn't turned around, hasn't said a word. It's so devastating.
Yeah. And Larry realizes that Balky is very upset. And so he stops putting on this fake laugh. And then he turns into sincere Larry again, and he apologizes. And he admits that when he thought Balky and Jennifer were having an affair, he kind of overreacted. And then Balky finally turns around to face Larry.
Snaps him out.
He says, kind of overreacted? Kind of overreacted? You had a meltdown.
Yes, he did.
And Larry's like, well, I thought you stole my girl, but you didn't. And Balky's like, no, I didn't. And he said, you were just buying me a Wellington 4000. And then Balky crying goes, with feather touch control.
And then we find out another thing interesting. Like when we found out the cousins were virgins a few episodes ago, we find out another thing interesting is Larry just goes, I don't understand why you would buy me this, Balky. It's not my birthday. It's not Christmas. Why would you buy this for me? And Balky's like, why would your best friend buy you a present? He goes, what am I? The first best friend you ever had? And then Larry laughs nervously, and then Balky continues. He goes, am I the first best friend you ever had? And Larry laughs again and kind of looks down and looks at Balky, and Balky goes, I am the first best friend you ever had. Wow. Larry goes, maybe, after shrugging it off. But then he goes, but I guess that's all over now after what I did, huh? And Balky goes, oh, cousin, so much to teach you. So little time. Then
we hear the lesson time music.
It's time for lesson time.
Now it's lesson time. So Balky tells Larry that, of course, their friendship is not over. And he says, best friends forgive each other, and I forgive you. And then they hug. And then Balky tries to lighten the mood. He goes over to the typewriter box in the living room. He says, now let's open this baby up and see what she can do. And Larry protests. He says, Balky, I don't deserve this. And Balky says, oh, cousin, please take this. And Larry goes, no, I can't. And Balky says, take it. And Larry keeps saying no. And Balky saying, take it. And Larry saying, no, I can't. And then finally Balky drops the box. He grabs Larry by the chest of his shirt. And he goes, take the typewriter. It's a gift from a friend. And Larry goes, okay. And then Balky's happy again, and he goes, okay. And then they sit down with the box and roll credits.
I love that. Take the typewriter. It's a gift from a friend. We can all relate sometimes when you get those crazy presents and you're like,
we'll talk about this in a minute. We're like, has Larry never been gifted anything nice that he doesn't know how to accept it? And
it's hard. I have a story about that too. But you know what would make a great gift is Dance of Joy t-shirts and hoodies and mugs.
Yes, get them for all your best friends
face masks,
and your cousin.
Yes, you can find all that at our TeePublic shop, danceofjoypod.com/shop, where there's wonderful sales all the time, every other week. You can save money and wear some cool swag. And send us a photo, whatever you buy. We want to see it and share it.
All right, let's talk about a few things. Larry has never had a best friend?
Yikes. Yeah, that's a surprising thing to learn. You know, he did grow up in a family of eight other kids, so maybe he didn't need a best friend per se because there was always kids around.
And I suppose like he wasn't gifted a lot of things. He has mentioned before that he always had like, he never had anything of his own. He had like hand-me-downs.
Well, but let's talk about adult best friend. It's so sad thinking of him growing up without a best friend.
No best friend? What about college? What about, I don't know.
No, he was too studious and into his books to do anything.
Too frantic.
Marianne had some killer, hilarious lines this episode. I loved every line she had. It's great.
Yeah.
And overall, this episode I love because it has everything. It's very funny, but it is your classic misunderstanding that happens over and over again that'll lead to hilarity. There's a secret, there's a plan.
Misunderstanding. We had Marianne's funny lines. We had physical comedy and facial expression.
It has everything. It was a great episode.
We had some really funny exchanges and some revelations about our characters. Tell me about this difficulty you had accepting gifts.
No, it's just, sometimes it's somebody gives, for example, here's for our other podcast, Jock and Nerd podcast. I have a listener. We have one listener who loves the show, supports us the show, gives us a lot of money every month. I had mentioned, wanting to play the Spider-Man game on a PlayStation 4 in one episode, and that I didn't have a PlayStation, and I would love to play this. This dude bought me the PlayStation that Spider-Man 4 shipped it to my house, and I was like, oh. Whoa. And half of me was like, I can't accept this, and the other half of me is like, here's my address. How quickly can you get it here? Because I'm going to plug this in.
Both halves of me were like, you gave a stranger your home address?
He's not a stranger. He's a loyal listener of my show.
Okay. Well, maybe you can give him a P.O. box address next time.
You can't fit a PlayStation in a P.O. box. I checked. Anyways, you get over that, though.
That's very
sometimes.
kind. That's very kind. And how can we get that listener to be a fan of this show?
Every podcast needs a listener like that. Let me tell you something. That's for sure.
I mean, I've been there before. It's uncomfortable sometimes, especially when you're not used to it.
Yes. Yes. But it's a humble lesson to learn. Like, look, I'm just accept it, be gracious, because
you have to just say thank you.
Yeah, you're going to insult the other person at this point. Yeah. One thing I did not like about this episode is there was no Dimitri appearance.
There was no Dimitri. I looked and looked and looked.
That's
and
weird. They're in the apartment. They could have put him. They could have set him up somewhere.
But you know what was in the background was that, what did we call that weird thing?
The caribou, the treasure caribou.
The treasure caribou, yeah.
Oh, that's over there, yes.
That was on the shelf in the back. And we had a poodle, Marianne's poodle.
That's true. We had an actual animal.
A real life poodle. Okay, we had some good Balkyisms. Cousin Larry's going to put 2 and 4 together. I give until I'm blue in the head.
Don't be ridiculous, said one time.
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
You got my favorite Harriet Winslow catchphase. Don't do that, baby.
Don't do that, baby. We have Marianne going, all right.
Oh,
and one instance of Balky saying, oh. Other running gags that we see in this episode, Larry's back on his antacid kick. Now, this is an interesting thing that you and I have talked about. In the beginning of this show, like the very first few episodes, this antacid thing was like a very common, constant running gag. And then it fell off for many episodes for like most of season 2, in fact.
They mentioned it last episode in the shopping spree.
If not all of season 2, yeah. And now it's come back. So I wonder what, what the process was with the writers. Were they like, oh, we forgot that was funny?
That thing was funny. Yeah, I think it's exactly that. It was like, oh, that thing was funny, and he's stressed. And like, Mark Lynn-Baker is full, like, neurotic, panicky Larry in this, and he does such a great job. So yeah, he's gonna need an answer. This is the
but we didn't see that like for almost all of season 2.
No, that's true. That's true.
Okay, now it is time for the segment of our show that we call Perfect Strangers Today, in which we talk about if this story were to happen now, how would things in this episode be different?
Well, buying gifts now, it's a lot about sneaky Amazon ordering and scheduling it to arrive.
Gift receipts.
Gift receipts and like Amazon lock boxes where you can pick things up. So, physically hiding something and running around. You still do that a little bit, but you don't really need to do that anymore.
You don't really have to. And what kind of like, what's like the hot cutting edge gifts you would get for news reporters?
That's funny.
Days?
Like, obviously nobody's buying typewriters anymore unless you're like a hipster collector. I know a couple of dudes went to their house and they have like this collection of antique typewriters, like 50 of them from all different years. I'm like, oh my God, this is where all the typewriters are.
I love antique typewriters.
So yeah, today it's the Apple iPad and Apple Pencil, where you can literally, you write words in your handwriting and it turns it into text and it reads it. You could draw things right there and attach clips. And I don't know, is that how people do it now?
I don't know. I was a reporter once upon a time, but it's been a while.
A lot easier to hide an iPad, though, than a giant.
Yeah, all these things are small. It's a lot easier to give someone an iPhone.
The typewriter went to the word processor.
Also a large machine.
Yeah, it was like it was like half typewriter, half computer. It hadn't full.
You had like a small, narrow screen.
Yeah, LED, black and white of like LED pixels. And then that eventually morphs into like a full desktop computer. I love the technology change in, especially for printing and typewriting. Yeah, it's fascinating. What else? I guess the same thing would kind of happen. You've been in that. I think some people you've been in that situation where you're throwing like a surprise party and you're making.
Let's talk about suspecting your friends of cheating.
Okay, and jealousy a little bit. I mean, jealous rage is still a thing.
You would check your like doorbell cams. You would hire like these shows. There's like whole television shows.
Yes.
You would check like the text messages on the phone and like try to like guess the password on the phone to see the communication.
Everybody has Ring camera doorbells, and you can just see everybody coming and going. And sometimes it's convenient. Like today, my wife came back. She's like, what time did I leave? And I was like, I can look it right up. Look, watching the video of you leaving, it was noon. There it is. I was just like, that's crazy. It's just, I have it on my phone.
Right. So, yeah, I think if the episode, if made today, would have a lot of those, like a lot of different ways that Larry would try to catch them.
He's a crack journalist, so he would have found them. His investigative senses would have kicked in.
He would have like tracked phones and the GPS on the phones and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really all I could think of for this.
Yeah.
Because love is love, and heartbreak and jealousy is always timeless. It's time for, I'm really excited for this week's Balky Duds report from our friend Rainey. If you are a new listener, this is our friend Rainey, who runs an Instagram account called Balky Duds about the awesome clothes and vests Balky wears on the show.
We had some good ones in this episode, so let's hear it.
She provides us an audio report every episode on the crazy things he wears, and this one had some crazy things.
Hello, this week, Sophia and Imran. Do you see what I did there? I said your names the opposite way. I'm trying to spice it up a little bit.
I like it.
This is Rainey from Balky Duds, here with you for Season 3, Episode 6, Your Cheatin' Heart. I love this episode. I'm really excited to hear everything that you have to say about this one. I thought it was really fun. Like I have said before, Season 3 and Season 4, I think, were some of my absolute favorite episodes in there. And also, the outfits, oh my god, I love them. So this episode was interesting because Balky has 3 different outfits, and 2 of them at least one is definitely like a store-bought number, but it just really speaks to me. And then the second one is another one of those in-between outfits where I'm really not sure if it was made for him or not, but I think it was like a store-bought miracle. So the first thing we see when they are at the Chronicle, working down in the basement, we see Balki's shirt, and it has like all these almost primary colors on it. It's got kind of like a slightly off primary blue and a slightly off primary red. It's really bright. It is a Crayola explosion. And mwah, chef's kiss, it speaks to me. It is a very, very good one for Balki out of the store-bought batch. So I had to give it a shout out. Second, in this episode, we see a vest. It is the black and white vest.
Yes.
I actually can't remember if I've ever seen this one before, even in later episodes. It did not look familiar to me at all. It's black, and it's got kind of the white, or at least like slightly off-white shapes on it. And as I stared at it a little bit more, I really wanted to call it an MRI because it looks like a brain scan. Like
I like that name.
However, the first name that popped into my head when I initially saw it was Rorschach, like a Rorschach test.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going with.
I could see that.
The third outfit that we see in this episode, I believe that it may have been a store-bought one. It doesn't look custom-made, but my God, it is insane. So I want your listeners this week to look at this episode, look at this freaking shirt, where it is like, there's colors down the middle, there's flowers on it, but then the rest of it is kind of black and white, and it's this really cool linen light fabric where and it has these like gathered in kind of bottom of the sleeves, or at least like there's the repeating pattern around the bottom of the sleeves near the cuffs. That's the same with all the flowers. So this one really stood out to me. I just can't even describe it, and I couldn't name it. And I want your listeners this week to write in or leave a voicemail or something, and I would love to see if anyone has an idea for what to call this shirt. So yeah, that's all I've got for you this week. I hope to hear from somebody. You could also leave it as a comment on my Instagram or Dance of Joy's Instagram. And remember to find me. It is Instagram at BalkiDuds. See you later.
Yay!
So great. Okay, Rainey, I'm not a listener, but I have some thoughts and an idea.
For the listener, when this episode comes out, I will post a screenshot on our Facebook group of the shirt, and you can leave I can't believe it stumped Rainey with the name, but this is a great idea. You can leave your idea for the name. What can you tell us about this pattern and this textile? It's amazing.
Okay, so fun fact, I spent some years living in Central Asia and many years after that going in and out working in Central Asia. And Central Asia is one of the big things there. They're known for their textiles, and they have this very specific design pattern. Well, it's not specific. It's like a genre of design called ikat, I-K-A-T, or sometimes called atlas pattern. And these patterns on this shirt, this last shirt that Rainey talked about, is very Central Asian ikat style. And I always notice it right away anywhere I see it. It's like very trendy at like stores like high-end furniture stores and like stores like Anthropologie and stuff. I always notice it when I see it. It is not the first time I've seen Central Asian patterns on Balki.
Yeah.
But this shirt in particular, all of the colored bits are very Central Asian ikat. If you Google Central Asian ikat pattern or atlas pattern, you can see what I'm talking about.
You definitely, the color block down the center there. And also the fact that...
And just the pattern itself, that sort of like bleeding vertical.
It's like blurry.
That's very Central Asian.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to play along. I am going to give a recommendation. We will go with a listener's recommendation in the end. But in Central Asia, they love things with patterns, right? You go into someone's house, there's patterns on patterns on patterns on patterns. People wear patterns on patterns, and it's considered beautiful. And the word for beautiful in Uzbek, which Uzbekistan is where I lived, the word for beautiful is chiroyli.
Ooh,
so I'm going to call this the chiroyli shirt.
Chiroyli shirt. I like that. And it's like linen and light, and it seems really comfortable to wear and breezy.
It was a beautiful shirt, actually.
Yeah, it's a crazy shirt.
As soon as I saw it, I was like, that is a beautiful shirt. I would love to know the actual story behind that shirt on the show, or where they found that.
It is very unique, and it sticks out even amongst like all the crazy things he wears.
So my suggestion is just the word chiroyli.
Well, and everyone else, go to our Facebook group, join the group, leave your name suggestion. We'll read them all. Lots of fun. I love it. Again, Rainey, Another great report. And these
Great report.
patterns are so fascinating. Let's wrap up with a couple of shout outs from our cousin listeners.
Couple of shout outs. We have returning cousin listener, cousin Evelyn.
Oh, cousin Evelyn.
Who points out that she likes that the writers give Bronson Pinchot a wide range of emotions to play on the show.
Yeah.
Balky is usually the optimistic, sweet, happy, funny character, but occasionally he shows real vulnerability and authentic depth of emotion, and Pinchot is quite good at depicting it. I think this is why he is such a lovable character. If he'd only been optimistic, sweet, happy, funny, we would like him, but we wouldn't garner the same level of affection in the viewer.
Yeah, good point.
Mark Lynn Baker is given a relatively smaller range, but he is really skilled too. Anyway, I thought the acting in this episode was strong from both of them and from Melanie Wilson too. And fun fact about cousin Evelyn is she is a professor of psychology, so has a lot of insight into these character choices. Thank you, cousin Evelyn.
And then Pam Hitchcock, simply cousin Pam, simply says, what I saw in this episode is that Balky has way more chemistry with Jennifer than Marianne.
This is true.
Oh, that's a good point. It's kind of confusing also.
It's kind of funny because, I mean, that's a very good point. And I wonder if they did this intentionally, but you have two sets of pairs, right? First, you have Balky Larry and Jennifer Marianne.
Yep.
And in that pair, Balky is like the fish out of water sometimes, but if we're talking about like reasoning, like Larry is the one that gets frantic and Balky is the even-keeled,
cool.
logical
calm,
one,
collected.
right?
Yeah.
And in Jennifer Marianne is like the loopy one.
Yeah.
And Jennifer is the even-keeled reasonable one.
Oh, yeah.
But you have another set of pairs, which are the couples.
Yep.
You have Jennifer and Larry and Marianne and Balky.
And those dynamics are great.
And so each of the reasoning character has to be paired with one of the
opposite
oddballs, right?
Yeah.
And you think, like, on the surface of the show, you think Balky is the oddball, but he's not most of the time.
It ends up being Marianne because...
No, Larry. Of Balky and Larry.
Oh, Balky and Larry. Yeah.
Larry becomes like the
Yeah, he goes way outside and crazy.
way oddball. Yeah.
And
so
Balky's got to
it's funny
reel
how
him back
these
in.
dynamics change. Okay, I have one more thing to add to our show today, and that is some episodes ago, I can't remember which, of our show, I believe we were chit-chatting, and I threw out this idea. I said that I would love to see a Dimitri the Sheep Instagram account.
I think it was the episode Rainey came on and we were talking about, she said she's going to do a Larry Duds and you were like, why doesn't somebody do a Dimitri
Dimitri
one?
the Sheep. So it was our season break episode.
Yeah.
And I do believe that somebody, a mystery listener of ours, took that to heart because about 3 days ago, there appeared a Dimitri Sheep Instagram account. Listeners, check it out.
Oh my God.
Dimitri, Dimitri, Sheep, all one word. And it's super cute. Whoever
well
this
done.
is, well done, listener. Mystery Dimitri the Sheep listener, well done, because this person has a Dimitri the Sheep. Or it's Dimitri taking selfies on a selfie stick or on a tripod. But the posts are themed by the episode.
Yes, it's so good.
And this Dimitri the Sheep account is caught up to where we are right now.
So it's like an updated Dimitri sighting per episode with stuff from today.
And it's super cute, themed to the episodes.
Listen, I
Very
think that I
well
want to know
done.
who this is. I think this is one of you listeners out there, and it's really, they followed us on Instagram. We followed them back. It's really cute.
Super cute.
I need to know who's
And
doing
clever.
this. This is great. Yes.
All the themed for each episode. There's like Dimitri the Sheep in a relevant situation. For this one, your cheating heart that we just spoke about.
Yeah, let's describe this photo. It's great.
Dimitri the Sheep is typing on a typewriter.
So they have like an old school pink
Yes,
typewriter.
it's an old typewriter.
It's great. Yes.
The paper on the typewriter says in big black letters XOXO.
It's
Very
so
well
cute.
done. Super
Yeah.
cute.
There's like pink flowers in the back.
Yeah,
The composition's
so-
nice.
check out the account. And it's exactly caught up to where we are on our podcast.
I find
so
all
this
of
is
this
a mystery we need to crack.
That's the most interesting thing. Also, the one where he's wearing, the Spider-Man pajamas that I said I was
All
so
of
jealous.
them. There's one about
he's
New
looking
York
up
with
Spider-Man
music.
pajamas on Amazon. It's hilarious. This is so Dimitri Sheep, whoever you are, good job. Drop us a note.
Well done. Bravo or brava,
I'll
whoever
put
you are.
links in the show notes.
Super
you can follow
impressed.
Balky Duds
Also,
and Dimitri
I
Sheep.
would love to know where to get a Dimitri the Sheep, or if this is Dimitri himself. Well done, Dimitri. Well done.
Well done indeed.
So cute, and we will keep an eye on this Instagram account for sure.
Stay tuned. I haven't watched next week's episode. Sister, what happens next week?
Next week, we get some interesting predictions about Larry's future from a psychic.
Oh, man. I kind of like psychics. It's fun to entertain. I went to Sedona, Arizona once. It's full of nothing but like psychics and fortune tellers.
I just got my palm read on the street
Oh, you did?
the other day.
I think palm reading, there's something there in
It
the
was
palm reading.
completely inaccurate. No, it was half inaccurate and half. Okay.
That's a guy who's a hack palm reader. He
It was
learned
for
it on
$5. It was a lady.
That's what happens when you learn it on YouTube, how to palm read. That's all you do.
She was apparently like generational psychic, and her family, she like grew up in this area. Her family is at the same storefront for she was on the street.
Well, maybe the
outside.
power diminishes with each generation. It just kind of peters out.
But she got the first half. She almost had me in the first half of the 5 minutes or whatever. And then the second bit was totally inaccurate. And then she tried to like sell me on the next level. I was like, nope, you lost.
I can't wait for this episode because, there's ways to cold read people and make it sound like, there's a lot of good guesses you can make. Anyways, you want to stick around, subscribe to the show. You can find all the follow links on our website, danceofjoypod.com. Just go there.
Go there, like us, subscribe to us, leave us a rating or a review. You can get in touch with us several ways. You can send us an old-fashioned electronic mail at danceofjoypod on the googlemails.com, or you can leave us a voice message. There's a little button on the bottom right of the website, or you can find us on any of the social medias, and all of the links are right there on the website. But most importantly, what's most important, Imran?
Share this show with all your cousins, cousin. Share
All
it
your
with your cousin's cousins, your second
And your
cousins.
best friends.
And your best friends. And get everyone listening to Dance of Joy. And now we are so happy.
Now we are so happy we do the dance of joy. Hey, 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 hey,
Hey, hey, hey, hey, hey.